All right. Hey, Jeremy, welcome back to the podcast. Great to have you.
Yeah, Danny, thanks for having me back.
Yeah. So Jeremy is a good friend of mine here in San Antonio, and we meet for coffee and to eat from time to time. He was actually episode 3 of this podcast. And I almost hesitate to kind of tell people that because I don't want them going back to listen to how nervous I was. Because I'm sure it still comes through, because that's like where I recorded them before I ever released any of them. That was one of the ones that was recorded and then all released at once. But yeah, number 3. So what'd you say, bronze medal?
Yeah, I got the bronze. Yeah, I feel honored to get on the platform.
And I was like, yeah, and then before you, the only people before you were Brandon Turner from Bigger Pockets, which is, a great friend. And then, my dad, which, got to have my dad on there. So.
Oh, dude. I'm in astute company. So.
Right.
Yeah.
And then episode.
Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say also episode 74. So if anybody's listening to this is like, oh man, I really like Jeremy, want to find out more about what he's got to say, then there's 2 episodes, 3 and 74 on the podcast.
Yeah, cool. And I have actually, it's interesting how many people have reached out to me through the podcast. I remember I think that number 3, maybe because it's so high up in the ratings, I do kind of get people referring to that one quite a lot. So people are listening to it still.
Nice. And that was like, 40 years ago, I think we did that one?
Yeah, I had more hair and you had less grays.
Right. Oh, man. But, yeah, so that was, I don't know, it's probably 2.5, 3 years ago, maybe. Yeah, time flies. But you had told me a pretty interesting story that some investors in Australia actually reached out to you, right?
Yeah. And it was actually through being on your podcast that I met these guys.
Nice.
I'm pretty sure it was from the episode 3, and then a guy by the name of Reed Goosens had heard me on the podcast, and he reached out to me, and he reached out because he heard the Aussie accent and wanted to connect, and then I ended up going on a podcast that he has, and then he ended up creating a mastermind with a group of Aussies. We were all over here in the US doing real estate investing. We'd all come from Australia and seen the opportunities here and basically turned our lives upside down to take advantage of it. So it's kind of cool to network with some fellow countrymen.
Yeah. And you had told me about that last time we met up, and, I was intrigued by the story of it because you had said something about, the opportunity here and for people here, it's right under their nose, but sometimes it's not so, it's not paid the respect it should be, right? Or it shouldn't, you worded it so much better. I'm screwing this up. So why don't you just explain what you had told to me?
Yeah. I mean, I think that a lot of Americans, because they're born and raised here, they don't necessarily see the opportunities that somebody like myself from Australia would see from a real estate perspective, specifically. I've always been interested in real estate, but like when I was in Australia and interested in real estate, there's no such thing as a rental property that it has a positive cash flow. And you may find them, they're very, very rare. And this is just to give you one example, but in Australia, they have a tax law called negative gearing. And that's basically where you're allowed to write off the losses from your investment properties against your income tax. And they create that to be kind of a special benefit that you have. And really all you're doing is writing off your losses. Right. And people buy properties to write off the losses to take down the income. And so in America, that would be called like investing suicide, right?
Well, it's just the icing on the cake, right? If you have a rental property and, have that happen, but usually shooting for the cash flow, right? And the long-term asset. But so what you guys put together a book, right? And that was recently released. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So, once we got this mastermind going, we'd probably been together for about a year, just catching up monthly on calls. And then, we wanted to work out what we were going to do next as a group. And we came up with the idea to write this book. It got launched on July 4th, Independence Day. And the book's called 10,000 Miles to the American Dream, Our Story of Financial Freedom. And so I think what's really cool about the book, and the reason why we decided to write it, was we all realized that we all had this story that was very, very similar. We'd come from Australia. Most of us didn't really even come here with an intention to do real estate investing. A couple of the guys did, but for the most part, I would say the majority just ended up here. And then while we were here, we started to see the opportunities that existed. And, you know, and I guess our jaws dropped and, you know, and our fangs came out and we were like, man, you know, we've got to take advantage of it. And the end result is all of us are now living over here, investing over here. Most of us are married to an American, have an American wife, you know, and we've pretty much kind of turned our lives upside down to take advantage of what's going on over here and loving it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I love the name of it too. I love the name of the book because that's, yeah, really what it is. And, you know, it's an inspiring story, what you've accomplished, because you are, you know, quite accomplished as a real estate investor, as a house flipper. And you've done quite a bit. And to go and go to the next level here and create this mastermind and write a book. You know, I know that you have the experience behind that book, you know, like the parts that you wrote in that book, you know, come from all these years of experience. So, you know, definitely recommend anybody listening to this to go and get that book. You can get it on Amazon, right?
Yeah, you can go get it on Amazon. And again, it's 10,000 Miles to the American Dream.
10,000 Miles to the American Dream.
Yeah, and I think, you know, just to give the audience a bit of a flavor of what to expect, you know, a part of the book definitely is our stories, you know, the 8 of us, kind of a little bit about our background and what brought us to the US, and then how we got involved in real estate and, you know, where that's taken us to today. But one thing that was really cool about the group, and it was definitely one of the big reasons why we decided to write the book, was that we all were involved in different type of asset classes and had different type of experiences. So we kind of felt like, man, you know, there's a great opportunity not only to tell this cool story of these 8 Aussie blokes that have, you know, flown across the other side of the world to do this, but we all did it in different ways. My area of expertise is single family and turnkey investing. You know, Bryce Robinson, one of the guys in the group, he does mobile park homes. Reed Goosens and Kevin, they both are in multifamily. Mark is involved in hotels, and then Tim is an IT guy that's kind of been involved in launching software businesses in the real estate space, and he's also done some big development projects as well. So we kind of weren't really competing in any way with each other. We just really had this. We felt we have this broad experience across the asset class. So what we try and give the readers is a small taste of each of the classes, so that they could get a feel for maybe which area of real estate may interest them to, you know, dig into a little bit deeper.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. So you're not just going to get one topic repeated by 5, 6, was it 6 people?
There's 8 of us.
Oh, 8. It's repeated, you know, from 8 different perspectives of the same thing you guys are doing. That's great. How many pages is the book?
It's a little under 300 pages.
Right. Nice. Can you give us a taste of what you participated in that book with? What was your section of the book with the single family?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So my focus, you know, my experience is single family. You know, that's how we had met. We were both kind of flipping houses here in San Antonio. And, you know, we were in that group of guys, I guess, that was doing it a little bit before a lot of people were doing it. I know you've been doing it a long time, but, you know, for me personally, I landed here 2006. I got married in 2008, and that's when I knew, like, man, I just got my life sentenced to the US. And it was kind of in a good way, you know. Yeah. But it was kind of around that time that I started to have the thought process of, you know, hey, I was working in corporate America. That's what brought me here. And I started to think, like, hey, now that I'm going to be here for life, what can I do to set up some more freedom so that, you know, if I need to go back to Australia to see family, see my mum, whatever, I have a bit more flexibility. And so that's how I kind of gravitated to real estate. Flipped my first house in 2009 and quit my job in 2011. So that was kind of the big, you know, jumping off the cliff, which I know a lot of people out there kind of fear, but you know, best decision I ever made. And the last 8 years or so, it's really been focused on scaling a flipping business. But I think probably about like 2 or 3 years ago, I had the realization that it wasn't about how many houses I could flip that was important. It was really about how many I could hold. Because I realized I was doing a decent job flipping and making some cash, but, you know, a lot of the cash would be, you know, would be growing the business, or, you know, you might spend it or whatever. And that's
yeah, you had what, 3 Lamborghinis at one point?
Yeah, no, I wish I had. But yeah, and I just kind of realized, like, man, you know, if I want to I guess, what I really thought was, what's the end point of all this? What's the end game? And I realized it's really about financial freedom. And so to me, financial freedom is about being able to wake up and do whatever you want on any given day without having to worry about a job or a schedule that you're really tied to. And I'm still in that process at the moment of building out, I guess, what I define as my financial freedom. I'm still continuing to buy and hold assets, and I have goals around how many houses I want to own. But really, instead of having a goal around how many I want to flip, it's really turned to how many I want to hold. And knowing that once I hit my goal, I can exit and live happily ever after.
Yeah.
So,
Nice.
Yeah. So my chapter, really, back to your original question, is really just around why through what I've learned, why I believe investing in single family homes is such a solid investment option, for everybody, not just people who are out there flipping houses, but regular people that, maybe are used to investing their money in more traditional means like stock market and things like that. So I try and kind of open up to some of the benefits and key reasons why turnkey works, and helping people to understand, like, hey, this is something that everyone can do, whether you've got retirement funds like in an IRA or cash. You can put that into these single family assets and build rental portfolios that will generate massive wealth over time.
Nice. So before we get into that, though, I'm curious about your strategy for picking up your own, holders that you're going to have. Are you doing a mix of things where you're flipping a lot and using those profits to buy free and clear rental properties, or is your strategy more of buying the discounted properties at discount, fixing them up, and having built-in cash flow, but you still have a loan or something against the property?
Yeah. So the properties that I really like for myself and also for our turnkey clients is the ones that have an ARV of between like a 140 and 200. And so they are nicer properties. Like, the median price in San Antonio, I haven't checked it recently, but I think it's somewhere around probably 225 or 200 to 225. So you're right in that pocket, which is kind of right around that median. And so a lot of the houses that I'm keeping as rentals or selling to clients as rentals are ones that I would have flipped before. They're not kind of low end cash flow properties. And the reason why I like those type of properties, and I guess this is really what the strategy that I'm all about and I do for my clients, is it's all about quality. So if you have quality assets and you do a quality rehab, then you can bring in quality tenants, and you're also going to have a quality experience moving forward for the tenants and for the owners, because there's no deferred maintenance. And we try and kind of tackle all the issues with the house up front, so that when you invest in it, you don't have to worry about all these surprises coming up and all these extra costs. You kind of just have, 5 to 10 years of pretty predictable performance. And I think like that type of price point and that type of product is really where you need to be to have that experience. So that's kind of what we target.
Yeah, that's smart. And I like that, because you're focused on what you really want, and that's lifestyle. Right? Because all of us, at the end of the day, we say, we want to make that money for the lifestyle. But while you're doing it, you got to be building the lifestyle. You can't just say, well, I'm going to kill myself until I get all of this, and then I'll have that lifestyle. That the lifestyle should be a part of what you're doing right now. So I love that that's what you're focused on. Not, well, if I got these El Dumpos in the war zone, we could cash flow this much, but your life could be miserable dealing with those.
Yep.
And so focusing on these ones where, you're going to make great money and have an asset that's going to appreciate, good tenants most likely, and all that kind of stuff really plays into it. So.
Oh, absolutely. And on that point, because in the early days when I was investing, I actually started acquiring a rental portfolio, which was the lower end stuff, the stuff that was probably under 75,000 ARV at the time. And we got up to about 30 houses, and I ended up selling them all because the experience was terrible. Like we had evictions all the time. We had issues with tenants. I think part of it was we weren't as experienced, but a big part of it was definitely the range that we were dealing with. And since we've changed the model and focused on quality and this better product, it's like night and day. Like we rarely have to file, at the moment we've set up a management company that's managing over 100 properties. You know, we've only done like maybe 2 evictions in the last 2 years on those 100 properties. And our, you know, our rent collection's high, our occupancy's high. So it is a totally different experience for us, the 2 different models. And I guess proven to me that I was lucky to go in that direction.
Well, I'm glad that you added rent collection is high, because you could say eviction is low, but if you're leaving people in that aren't paying, then that's the reason why that's low. But yeah, anyway, my head's going in a different direction, but it was just
another part. I know you're an IT guy, so you'd appreciate this, but a big thing that's helped us as well is the technology that we've set up on the property management side.
Oh yeah.
You know, we use something called AppFolio, and all the interactions with the tenants is online, and so that's been a game changer as well to really help you know, improve the experience, I think, for everyone involved in the process.
Yeah, keeping everything very organized. Yeah,
big time.
Yeah, I can't appreciate that. So what you had, I think you had said something like there's like 5 reasons, you know, to own the turnkey real estate, I think was something that you had written in the book. Is that right?
Yeah. In the book, I kind of focus on the 5 main reasons or 5 key benefits of real estate. And just at a high level, and we can dig into these in as much detail as you think the audience would like, but just at a high level, I think in the US, there's lots of markets that exhibit high market appreciation. And Texas in particular is really strong from that perspective, because Texas has 2 things going for it. It has a low cost of the houses to start with. So a house is a lot cheaper here than it is in California. And it's also got high population growth. So when you combine population growth with a low starting point for the houses, the only way those houses can go up in price is, you know, the only way they're going to go is up.
Yeah.
So I think, and there's other markets like that, but Texas, I think Texas is, that's probably, it's almost at the top of the list from that perspective because of the growth that's going on.
And it's Texas. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Like, don't say anything more. It's
exactly. Well, I'm from Australia, and I'm now like claim to be a Texan. So it's
I know. I see the thing behind you there. You got this. Was that the state emblem or whatever?
Yeah, I actually got the state emblem there, and then I've got my map of Australia. So.
Oh, nice. Cool. I couldn't see the whole one of that. I didn't know what that was. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm 50-50. So. But, so that's the first thing, and then the second thing is the high cash flow yields that exist in the US. So, and I kind of said at the beginning of the podcast, in Australia, like, you can't find something that'll cash flow. Here, like, it would be stupid to invest in something that's not. And these properties, like in San Antonio, for example, if you were just doing an all cash purchase, you can generally get around a 6% return on your cash once all your expenses have been taken out. And that's solid, especially when you consider interest rates are below that. So that's where you can get that delta where you get the positive cash flow.
Yeah.
So I think those high cash flow yields, and I think with cash flow, there's a couple of misconceptions out there. I think most people that want to invest in rental properties, they do it for the immediate cash flow because they want to get, you know, a certain amount per month. You know, they say, hey, if I could do $250 net cash flow per house and I have 10 houses, that's $2,500 a month, right? But I kind of look at it a different way. I look at it from the perspective of how much principal is getting paid down through the cash that's generated from the rent. And that, to me, is where the real wealth's created. And for me personally, you know, you can do different amortization schedules, but I love to try to set up 15 to 20 year AM schedules so that I own these things free and clear. And it's the high cash flow that enables that.
Right. So you're trading short-term, you know, cash flow for, you know, faster, long-term, greater cash flows.
Yeah, exactly.
Have it paid off sooner, you're going to make so much more. And then your interest that you're paying on all of that money is cut way, way down. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think for anyone, if they just kind of play with some amortization schedules, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with a 30 schedule, because I think that works. That works because market appreciation gives you the upside anyway. So the market appreciation is always going to kick in and your asset's going to go up. But if you look at the difference on a 30 and a 15 or a 30 and a 20, it's not that much more that you're paying every month, but it's a massive impact 5-10 years down the road. And so that's where I kind of think, and if you're not putting it back into the house, you're probably just spending it. So, you know, You might as well get it back in the house.
Yeah, you're not reinvesting it. You might tell yourself you're going to, but you're not.
Yeah,
That's how you end up with 3 Lamborghinis.
exactly. Yep. So that's the second one. Then the third one, the third big benefit is interest rates. And one of the things I noticed in the US when I came over here was like, man, everyone drives new cars. Everyone's got everyone's got the nicest phones, best flat screens, and it is really a difference, I think, between what I see in Australia or the UK, I've lived there as well, and the US. And the US has a lot of credit and financing that's available for everything. It's a very debt-driven culture. And the benefit for that of investing is that there's a lot of capital out there that you can access to get loans on your properties. And, the type of stuff I'm doing, because I'm doing a decent volume of houses, I do commercial lending. But for regular people, you can get up to 10 properties just with regular lending and great terms, and if you're getting those properties through regular lending for your first 10, you can get fixed interest rates for 30 years that are like around 5%, and so that's exceptional to have that opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
And again, to compare it to Australia, in Australia, like there's no such thing as a 30-year fixed in Australia, even on your personal home. So the longest that you can, it may have changed since I was last there, but when I was there, the longest you could fix an interest rate was 5 years.
Really?
Yeah. So even on your personal house, you would not know like 5 years from now what your payment may be adjusted to. Whereas here, you can lock it in for 30 years.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. Yeah. It makes you appreciate that fact. You just take it for granted that that's something that we can do, thinking that everybody else can do something similar, and it's not the case. Yeah.
Big time. Yeah, definitely. So that's the third reason. And then the fourth is the ability to leverage. And this is something this sounds like such a basic concept, but I didn't even realize this for a long time. And when I realized that, I realized how I really needed to own as much assets as I could, right? And the point here is that with leverage, you're able to refinance your equity that you've built up in your portfolio at any point in time. And when you do that refinance, the cash that you take out is 100% tax-free. So let's say that you've started a portfolio with 50 grand and over time you bought a house every year for 5 years and whatever, it grew up, and then 10 or 15 years from now you have $1 million of equity, right? With that equity, you could go to the bank and say, hey, I've got these 10 or 15 properties. They're generating good cash flow. I want to refinance out at a 70% loan to value. And so they'd give you $700,000. And then whatever debt you have left, you would use that $700,000 to pay off the remaining debt. And the difference is cash that you just put in your pocket. And there's not one piece of tax that you pay on that money. And that's very, very different from people that invest in the stock market. And especially most people that they invest in mutual funds. And with mutual funds, there's a lot of buying and selling of stock that occurs in a mutual fund. And so when you're doing this buying and selling activity, people don't realize it, but you're getting taxed at the short-term gain rate when it's a buy-sell within a 12-month. And so you're paying tax on any profits that are made. And if it was within 12 months, you're paying an even higher tax rate. Now, when you compare that with real estate, you can build that equity position over time without any tax. And then when you pull the equity out, you don't pay tax either. So it's only if you sell the house that you have a taxable event. And that to me there is nothing out there that has that type of ability, right?
Right. Yeah. So okay. So what number was that?
That was the fourth one.
Fourth one. What's the fifth one?
The fifth one is it ties a little bit into that. It's all the tax benefits that are associated with real estate. Just to name a few, like even if you built a portfolio and you decided to sell it, then you can do a 1031 exchange and defer paying the tax by buying more real estate. I recommend to my clients, unless you do have a need to do a 1031 exchange, don't sell your properties, just refinance them because you get the money out tax-free anyway. So that would be one of the big benefits. But another huge benefit that's just come into effect in the last round of tax returns, I believe it was when Trump passed the tax reforms, he put something in there which was a little bit of gift for the investors, and it's something called accelerated depreciation.
Mm.
And a lot of people probably know about it, but I think a lot of people don't. And the summary of it is that while this law is in effect, if you bought an asset that was worth like 150 grand, you could probably write off about 30 to 35,000 of that asset against your income in the year that you purchased it.
Wow.
So that's kind of astronomical,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. And just because this is something I'm real passionate about, stop me if I'm going over the top, but but I was going to use an example of one of my clients because I thought this was so cool, right? So I've got this one client that's in California paying really high tax rate, 50% on her taxes. Her husband has a really high paying job and does very well. So they're in that top bracket. And while the husband is working and getting a strong W-2, she's responsible for their investments. And we started working together. She's bought about 10 houses from me now. And so to put it into perspective, from those 10 houses, she can probably get about a $300,000 deduction.
Wow.
And then she can offset that against her husband's income. Yeah. And they were paying 50% taxes. So it's kind of like they got a house for free, buy 10, get one for free just with the tax that they got back.
Right. No, that's incredible.
Yeah. And that's what I think, that's what I do. One of the reasons I kind of went into this turnkey space is, you can probably tell from how I'm talking about it, I'm so passionate about trying to help people understand it, because to me, the benefits are so amazing that there's nothing that comes close. And if you really understand how to build these plans and take advantage of the benefits, you can build more wealth than you could imagine compared to other options that are out there.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. That's huge. Yeah. Long-term wealth building and knowing those things that, the things that you were mentioning, all the tax benefits and the different ways to offset income and everything like that is incredible. Yeah. I mean, it's, if you've been flipping for a while and you're not considering these kinds of things, definitely it's time to start looking into this, because it's going to help you out. And you could be flipping X amount more properties just to cover because of taxes and everything else, when if you did some other things like Jeremy's talking about in addition to it, you wouldn't have to, because you're offsetting all of that and being able to keep more of what you're making.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
and because I know you have a lot of house flippers that do listen to the podcast, what I've learned through going in this direction is that the key to all of this is the bank financing. So really, in order to be able to create and to build the portfolio and create the long-term wealth, you need to be able to secure the long-term financing on the assets. And so that requires having enough income and having a good credit. And so, even if that's, I have people that come to me and don't have that to start with. And I say, well, that's cool. At least you know where the gaps are. So put a plan together to address the gaps. And if you start working on that plan now, you can still build out this portfolio, because time is on your side with this. And I think a lot of the time people are so short-term focused. And if they just looked a little bit further, like 5, 10, 15 years and had a plan and just know that steady wins the race, with just that principle of bank financing and accumulating assets over time, you're gonna be rich.
Yeah. No, I love that, because how many people do say, oh, I can't do that because of my situation right now. And what you're saying is, who cares? Like, where you're at now. So why don't you plan and work towards this? Not to just say, well, I can't do that, I'm going to go focus on something else. You can still build that plan around that and probably do better than a lot of people that don't create that plan and just get into wanting to make the quick turn real estate money and don't build the long term.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I do think those things, like maybe having a bad credit or feeling like you don't have the W-2 or whatever, that they are definitely things that are very easy to address if you have a plan. Like, they're things that you could address within a 12-month window. And when you kind of think about this type of investment strategy, I mean, this is really setting up for financial freedom. So depending on where you're at in your life, you could have 20, 30-year horizon to work on this. And but if you don't get through that first phase and you keep putting that off, before you know it, 10 years has passed and you're still in the same boat, same position.
Yeah, it's amazing how fast those 10 years goes by too.
Oh my gosh, dude, that's they're getting faster for sure.
Oh man. So the thing for me that's always the question of do I really want to do this because I have these assumptions about, the management. I don't want to have to deal with, hassles and management. So you guys are managing the properties. Can you go into the specifics of what you've learned about managing and how you guys have found a way to make it to where you're doing as well as you are? Because obviously you said you're not, your eviction rate's super low and collections are great. So how did you set that up?
Yeah, I think, what I've learned through this next round of having the higher quality assets is that so let me rewind. The first thing is that the property management is the critical component to the success of it over the long term, right? So, and I guess the reason why I decided to build a property management business as part of this rather than outsource it is I just felt like, even though we were starting from nothing and having to build it from the ground up, I knew it was a critical skill set that we had to master. And because the effectiveness of it has such a big impact on the long-term financial benefits you get out of it. It's like super critical. So understanding that, then, I've been on a journey to try to work out the best way to do it. And as I mentioned, I think the technology really helps.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the other thing that really helps is if you have a quality house and you attract a quality tenant and you do a rigorous background check and a screening process, then the only people that are coming into your house are people that care about their credit, don't want evictions on their record, understand that, like, if they leave a house that's trash, you're going to deduct all the money they owe and they're going to lose their deposit, plus they're going to go to collections and that's going to go on their credit. And so you're dealing with more responsible people and they care about keeping their record clean. And so as a result of that, they perform accordingly. And it's not to say that we don't have the ones that don't. There's some that don't work out like that and we have to put them to collections. But it's kind of rare, and for the most part I've found the people to care about it. Like if they've been in a situation where they do have a deficit, they say to us, don't put me to collections, let's work out a payment plan so I can pay you back. And that, it wasn't like that when I was in the low end space,
Yeah, no, that's cool because you speak from experience, right? Like you were in the trenches figuring out what types of people are best to rent to for these types of properties. And that comes from experience. That comes from doing it and experiencing all these little intricacies and finding out about all these different things to find out who are the right people. Because if you just hire out some management company that's only by the numbers and they're just kind of saying, well, we've got these applicants and we're going to choose one without really considering, they don't care how long that person stays in there, right? For the most part, I wouldn't assume so, but you've been in it and you know what it's like to have to deal with all of that. So you spend more time making sure that those are the right people.
Definitely. Yeah. And then I think the other thing for us is that, we have our own properties that we own that are managed by the management company. Then we have our clients' properties and they're treated exactly the same. If anything, I've actually really enjoyed having to manage the client's properties in addition to mine as I've been building it out, because it's really held us more accountable and it's pushed us to try and get to a higher standard because we have to deliver for the clients. And so, and I say to the clients, like, if there's a vacant property or if there's an issue that comes up, whatever the situation may be, we don't prioritize based on whether it's ours or theirs. Everything goes in the same system and is treated the same way. And so personally, I want to make sure that the management company I'm using is doing the best job. So I'm going to make sure that we keep improving in that area because it affects me on my properties as well.
Right. No, that's cool because you have a stake in making sure that you're just not setting up and forgetting it so you can work on something else. This is critical. And so you stay on top of it. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I don't think you're going to find that in most other management companies.
No, for sure. And then I think also, because we started as flippers, I think we're strong on the construction side. And, like before we put a tenant into a property, we have a very rigorous sign-off process, which involves, getting licensed HVAC, electrician, plumbers, roofing and foundation to do inspections and sign-offs on the properties. So we understand quality through our rehabbing experience. So we really try and start with a quality asset to start with to limit the problems down the road.
Oh yeah. Awesome. Well, Thank you so much for being on the show. And it's great to hear about the book that you just recently released on July 4th. And if anybody's listening wants to get a hold of you, is there a way for them to contact you, reach out to you?
Yeah, the best way would be to visit our website, which is AmericanTurnkeyProperties.com. And what I do love doing, if people are interested in, discussing this investment class in more detail, I have 30-minute consultations with people where I kind of understand their goals. I take them through a process and then try and set up a plan that matches what they're looking for. And it's probably the favorite thing I love doing. So if anyone's out there and they want to get started and they want to build a plan, reach out and we'll sit down and get it done.
Great. Well, thanks again, Geremy. It's always a pleasure having you on the show, and we'll have to get together for some Thai food again soon.
Yeah, mate, definitely.
All right.
Oh, and then I did one last thing I was going to mention is the book. I didn't mention, but as a group, we're branded the Real Estate Mates. So for information on the book and the group, you can go to the website, realestatemates.com. And that talks about the 8 guys and has more info on the book and all of our stories.
Okay, so Real Estate Mates, not realestateplaymates.com.
No, just we were toying with that one, but it was taken.
Real Estate Mates, all right. All right, Geremy. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, thanks, mate. I appreciate it.
Yeah, talk to you soon.
Have a good one.